Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Grim. So today I'm going to be talking about Stardust Crusaders and why it's my favorite part of Jojo, and why I think it's the best part overall for the entire series. And of course, you can have your own opinion on what the best part is. That's not what I'm trying to talk about here. What I'm trying to say is why I think part 3 is the most, let's say, close to a masterpiece in Jojo. That's the closest to a masterpiece. And obviously Jojo, I believe, is a masterpiece, but I think part 3 is probably the best part, and I'm just going to explain why I think it's the best part and why it's peak fiction for JoJo, and obviously taking out Steel Ball Run because Steel Ball Run hasn't been adapted yet and I haven't read it, so I'm waiting for that to get animated to read it, or I guess watch it, but I'll read it too. And I just want to talk about why my current favorite part is Stardust Crusaders and why I don't think that'll change unless part 7 changes that for me. So before we get into that, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell so you know right when I upload, because I'm going to be uploading every other day this week. I'm going to be making a video about Haikyuu pretty soon. I don't know when that's going to come out because it's a pretty long anime to finish while I'm making videos and stuff. But I'll let you know when I finish that, obviously, by making the video about it. And just stay tuned for that. And there's another anime, it's called Sane High School Basketball, I think. And that's kind of the one I want to compare Haikyuu to. So, well, I won't let you know when that comes out. You're going to have to click the subscribe button and notify yourself because that's how it works. Alright, anyways, let's just get right into it. So the plot of Stardust Crusaders picks off right where part 2 left off of JoJo. And it shows where Dio comes out of the coffin and kind of shows he's the main villain of part 3. It shows how Joseph has aged, and it shows who the new Jojo is going to be, which is obviously Jotaro Kujo. And all the Jo Bros, really good introduction of the characters, all that kind of stuff. By the way, there's going to be spoilers for this part of the video, so skip ahead like 2 minutes if you don't want to hear anything more about the plot. But I'm going to be going over a lot of spoilers in this video anyways, so that's your big spoiler warning right now. Leave if you want to experience JoJo for yourself, but I would debate that JoJo is just as good with spoilers as it is without, because you're not going to really know anything that's happening with how JoJo works, right? Because if I tell you in part 7, like the plot, I haven't even read it, and I know spoilers, but they don't make any sense at all, right? Like, I don't know what Jesus Christ has to do with the President of the United States, but obviously Araki ties it in some way, so if you're here for the more normal part like Stardust Crusaders, I guess the spoilers are a bit more straightforward, so you might want to click off, but if you didn't, then alright, let's just get right into it. So, the plot of Stardust Crusaders is, obviously, as I explained before, good introduction of the characters and all that. And after all that happens, then they go into the stand battles. Holly gets a stand, as all the Joestars do, and because she's, I guess, weak, she can't handle it. So they have to go kill Dio to get rid of her stand, because Dio is the one that makes her have a stand, I guess. Which kind of makes an inconsistency with Jotaro and all that, but I don't really think that that's an inconsistency. I'm not really sure how that works, because I haven't watched or read part 3 in a long time. So that works some way. I don't know how it works, but it works. And basically they set off on a trip to Egypt, and they learn along the way that they can't just go straight forward from point A to point B on a plane or anything, because the stand users can hijack the plane, do all different kinds of stuff, and all that kind of good JoJo, stand battle nonsense, which is seen with Gray Fly fight in the plane, and Joseph crashes his plane for the second time, I believe. I think he crashes a plane 3 or 4 times, which you can never really trust Joseph as a pilot, now can you? So a lot of the ways that they get around the stand battles is really creative in part 3, I believe. And after they get off the plane, they go with they go on a boat, and they meet this one guy, girl thing, her. She basically follows them around for a good portion of the part. And she'd be the only thing that I'd say sets part 3 back from every other part, right, with how good it is. But I think every part has that one character that nobody likes, right? Where they're written well, but nobody likes them. For example, the Jonkin Boy or the Invisible Baby from part 4. But a lot of people like the Invisible Baby, but I don't know, I didn't really care for her at all. She was just kind of there. I think part 5, I don't know if part 5 really has one. A lot of people like all the part 5 characters, but if you go into it pretty far, I'm pretty sure you could find somebody that somebody doesn't like, right? Like, I've heard people don't like Caesar. I don't understand why, but they don't like him. So there's always that one character that I guess in every part somebody doesn't like. But yeah, that's probably my one for part 3, is I don't really like that girl. But other than that, part 3 is pretty good. It's pretty straightforward from there. They go do a bunch of stand battles. They battle an orangutan on a ship, and then they get off the ship and they go in a hotel. They battle a guy in a hotel. And there's a lot of other sand battles that I can't really remember, but it's a lot of sand battles and unique in different ways. Some of the ones that stuck out to me were the one in the ghost town with Enyaba the Hag, and she had her smoke stand, right? I thought that was a really cool battle because of how Jotaro kind of just did suck and inhaled the stand, and it worked, which I didn't think it would work. That was kind of weird, but that's kind of what JoJo's is, isn't it? It's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure for a reason, and I really like the way that all the sand battles work in Part 3, right? And I think the other part about Part 3 that makes it so great is how you connect to the characters, and I think that's JoJo in general, because Araki can do something that not a lot of people can do, and I don't know how the manga chapters work because I don't really count the chapters, but I know that there is around 40 or so episodes in Stardust Crusaders, and in those episodes alone, you can feel sympathetic for a character death. Like, I've heard, like, a lot, everybody that I've heard that watched JoJo got sad over at least one character dying, right? And now, obviously, I said spoilers before. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to go into deaths right now, so if you don't want to know anybody that dies, then skip over this part right now. But when Caesar dies, I think that that wasn't even in 30 episodes. That was like 12 maybe, and people felt sympathetic for him. They felt like they lost somebody that they knew. That is incredible, I think, with JoJo. That's something that no other anime that, to my knowledge, has ever done before, that they make you feel sympathetic over a character in that short of a time. Same thing with Zeppeli in Part 1. Which obviously is a whole different thing, right? I didn't feel that sympathetic for Zeppeli, but when an author can make somebody die and have it actually matter in that short of a time, that's really good. As seen, I think, with in Part 3 where Kakyoin dies, right? That's the death that set apart all the other deaths, right? I think Avdol was kind of meant to be a surprise, and Iggy was really meant to be like I guess more of an awakening death. I don't really know how I would say it, but like anybody can die, right? In JoJo's, and obviously all the dogs die too, but except for Koichi's. But a lot of what makes JoJo so great is how they connect the characters to you in such a short amount of time, and I think that's really shown with Part 3 with how they have Kakyoin and Avdol and all these great characters die, and you see them just. It's sad. I mean, that's the only word I can use to describe is it's sad, and for me to feel sympathetic, or for anybody to feel sympathetic over a character in that short of a time, that's a really great thing that Araki does, right? And it's not something like with Your Lie in April, I'm not going to spoil anything about that, but let's just say that something not good happens, right? But that part in Your Lie in April, the thing that happens, that was over, I think, 40 episodes, and it was the main character. One of the main characters, right? I think the fact about JoJo is they can make you feel sympathetic for a character that's not even a main character. For example, Jotaro doesn't die, but people like Kakyoin and Avdol and Iggy all die, and they're like the characters that not really many people care about, I'd say. I don't really see many people talking about Avdol. I see a lot of people talking about Kakyoin, but not really Avdol, because Avdol is a way side character, right? And not that you should just push off and be like, oh, well, Avdol's death didn't matter, but Avdol was that one character that he was not in Stardust Crusaders for a long time. He's like Haru in Persona 5 with barely any screen time. And they made his death feel like something you should be, sad about. And I think that's a really good part of the anime, and how it just relates to your feelings that in that short of a time, right? And somebody that doesn't even really matter in the story. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that Avdol doesn't matter. He definitely does matter. He's a huge character in the show. But something like that in that short of a time is just really, really well done by Araki. And so the next thing I'd like to talk about after that is obviously with the whole fight against Dio. The whole bond between how the Brandos and the Joestars comes along, that comes along really great in this anime, and this part especially. I think they kind of forget about it in parts 4 and 5, but it's still definitely there. You can definitely see that the bond between the Joestars and the Brandos is still there, because in part 5 you have Jotaro looking for Giorno, and you have all these different, in the specific part 5, I don't think there's a lot of Joestar connection, let's say, but there's a lot of Brando connection, and just looking into how Dio's side of the family works, and how Giorno came along, and Polnareff obviously comes back, and stuff like that. But In part 5, there's not many parts where you get to see the Joestars and the Brandos duke it out, right? And I'd say the same thing in part 4. It's more so the Joestar side, where it's Josuke and Jotaro and Joseph and a lot of the main JoJos instead of the actual villain. And then part 6 comes back and they kind of take the JoJo thing back with the Brandos and Pucci, and I think that's the best way to do it, right? But with Stardust Crusaders, it brings back something that is prevalent through the entire series, and something that should have been dead, 200 years ago. So it's a really great way that Araki does the manga, and I assume whoever's writing the anime, whoever's directing it, is doing a great job too, right? And I think that not only the story puts feelings into JoJo, but the animation, the opening, the ending, everything about JoJo is just so great. I think the openings and endings are some of the best openings and endings I've ever seen in any anime, right? Where Pat Metheny does the ending for part 3, the second ending, right? And I like how they changed the opening and ending. Like the first opening, right, is like kind of Jotaro has the stage, right? And he obviously doesn't the entire anime, but it's all about like, oh, well, the Stardust Crusaders are gonna win. They're like these heroes, right? And then like the first ending is like kind of like a victory sounding one. But then you get like halfway through the season to the latter part, and you just see like this sad, somber-esque ending, and this kind of anticipating more so a hype up opening, right? Not like, oh, well, the Stardust Crusaders got this. They're all overpowered. It's more like anything can happen. Like that, it just reminds you of, and all the symbolism in the opening too, I think is really unique, and not many animes have done that before with the opening. And obviously, most openings have some kind of foreshadowing. In Attack on Titan, I could go on for hours about how the foreshadowing happens in the opening, and I just looked at it yesterday. But I think the way that JoJo's does the symbolism is really unique, and is such a cool thing that Araki, I guess, I don't know if he has any input on that, but whoever made the openings, the directors and everything, did a really great job in the openings and endings for part 3. Not to say that part 4 and 5 openings and endings are bad at all. I think that part 4's openings are really good. I think Great Days is one of the best anime openings ever, as I think all JoJo openings are probably at least in my top 20. I mean, all of them are. They're really good. But a lot of the part 3 opening and ending, the part 3 opening is actually my favorite opening of any anime ever, just because of the cinematics, not even because of the song. And then the part 3 ending, obviously, the second one I'm talking about, by the way. The second one, I have that on my playlist, right? I have all of them on my playlist, but the second ending is just such a good song. It's still a flashback, too, like, not a flashback, a reference. Because you know how Araki does the whole music references. Well, Pat Metheny is like an actual like group that was from the 80s, I believe, like a jazz group, and they still managed to do that, but have like a Stardust Crusaders feel to it. And I feel like that's what another part that makes JoJo great, right? Is all the references and how they tie everything together really nicely. I never feel like in JoJo like anything is weird or out of place. Now I feel like things are weird, definitely, with some of the scenes on their own out of context are very strange. But when you put them in context and you look at how the entire story lines up, it totally makes sense. Now, I think that one part of why people don't like JoJo's is just because of that. And I've talked about this before many times. But if you don't like JoJo, just because like the plot or nothing really gets you, I totally understand. But if you just refuse to watch it, then go and watch it. Do yourself a favor. Get past part 4, right? If you finish part 4 and you're like, this isn't good, then that's fine, right? Like that's the point where it's like, yeah, you can tell. But if you just watch part 1 through 3, I feel like part 3 is at one point where Araki was coming into who he was as an artist, and part 4 was like his first big part. But I feel like part 3 was that turning point that was really good at the same time, right? Because I think Jotaro has become a shonen icon. I'd say if manga went the same way that everything else in media does in general, I think JoJo was kind of under the radar just because of how not advertised it was, I guess. Because there wasn't an anime until 2012, which was a huge deal when it came out, and that's really not great, because JoJo's could have been the granddaddy of shonen if it came out in the 90s. And I know the whole OVA thing, right, but that wasn't greatly marketed. The voice acting was terrible for both sub and dub. Everything was awful. And I feel like the most recent adaptation has actually done it insane justice. So, yeah, a couple other things that I just want to touch on real quick. I think that the stand introduction really helps set part 3 apart from the other parts, right? Whereas the Hamon was kind of a place taker for something kind of like Fist of the North Star. Now, keep in mind, I haven't read or watched Fist of the North Star. But from what I've seen, it looks a lot like Jojo. The art style looks like Jojo. Jonathan looks like he's based off of the main character from Fist of the North Star. And I think that the whole power scaling thing had a lot to do and a lot of inspiration come from Fist of the North Star. And stuff like Dragon Ball and stuff like, I don't know, other animes that were fighting animes. I guess Rurouni Kenshin, if that came out at the time. I guess it could have been based off of that a little bit. I'm not sure when that came out, though, so don't quote me on that one. But the way that Hamon was introduced just didn't feel original to me. It felt like it was this thing, and it was obviously with the whole plot of part 1 and 2 doesn't really matter because in the whole power scaling thing, because you don't look at JoJo for the plot. You look at it for the characters. You look at it for like the general feel. And I feel like Araki writes part 3 in such a way where the plot is so basic that the characters and everything else in the battles pick up everything else that should matter, right? Whereas stuff like One Piece is pretty much the same way, is with a lot of character building, right? That's what makes One Piece great, I believe, is Luffy and Zoro and Usopp and Sanji and Ace and all these characters just coming together and being themselves and the comedy and all that. But I think what sets apart JoJo is it feels like you're on a road trip with the Crusaders. It feels like you're there, and only to do that in 40 episodes with what One Piece has done in over 900, that's a really incredible feat to do, and I think that's a really unique and creative thing that Araki has done, and why JoJo is so great, and why you should go watch it, why I think Stardust Crusaders is my favorite part, and why all the other parts are still amazing, but Stardust Crusaders just really, for some reason, hits different, to put it for lack of a better term, right? So, yeah, with that, thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one where I do Saiyan High School, whatever, or Haikyuu, or you'll see whatever the next video is, but make sure you have those notifications on so you know when it comes out. So yeah, and I'll see you in the next one.